Conversations for Health, dedicated to engaging discussions with industry experts, exploring evidence-based cutting-edge research and practical tips. Our mission is to empower you with knowledge, debunk myths, and provide you with clinical insights. This podcast is provided as an educational resource for healthcare practitioners only. This podcast represents the views and opinions of the host and their guests and does not represent the views or opinions of Designs for Health, Inc. This podcast does not constitute medical advice. The statements contained in this podcast have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Any products mentioned are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Now, let's embark on a journey towards optimal well-being, one conversation at a time. Here's your host, Evelyn Lambrecht.
Welcome to Conversations for Health. I'm your host, Evelyn Lambrecht, and I'm very excited to welcome back to the show today, Dr. Barry Tan. Hi, Barry.
How are you? I'm glad to be on your show again.
Me too. We have so much to talk about. This is going to be part 2. This follows our conversation from our second episode of Conversations for Health. Last time we talked about vitamin E tocotrienols, why they're the preferred form of vitamin E over tocopherols. We also talked extensively about geranol, or GG for short, and its importance in bone health, pain management, and so much more. I do recommend listening to that episode if you haven't. And if you're listening to this, did you know you can also watch the full video on YouTube as well as on our website, podcast.designsforhealth.com. One of my practitioners told me she listened to the last episode 3 times and she can't stop talking about tocotrienols with her patients, which is very exciting. We also have the full transcript of every show available at podcast.designsforhealth.com. So Dr. Barry Tan's research expertise is in vitamin E tocotrienols, in GG, and in CoQ10, and he was the first to introduce the benefits of tocotrienols to the nutrition industry. He's also the chief science officer at Designs for Health, and like I said last time, we're so lucky to have you. So today we're going to talk more about coenzyme Q10 or CoQ10, and I understand that, Barry, you actually invented this compound which combines CoQ10 and GG. Can you talk more about this?
Yes, I would love to do that. If you look at the CoQ10 molecule, let's say it's this long. In fact, since you asked the question right now, I'm going to come off screen so that you can see the background. On the very back is a very long molecule of CoQ10, and in front is a shorter molecule of GG, and the entire tail of CoQ10 is actually constructed by the molecule of GG. So the shorthand, GG constructs the whole tail of CoQ10. So I'm going to stand backward. Hopefully you can still hear me. And in the front here, when my hand is touching, that's a GG molecule. If I take the GG molecule away, that's the entire CoQ10 molecule. And CoQ10 is like an albatross. It's very large and it's hard to absorb. So everybody's talking about bioavailability, but we add CoQ10 to GG. You see that? You can see the tail of CoQ10 here is this GG. So 2.5 length of the GG is CoQ10. So you mentioned about the invention. The invention is we use CoQ10, the normal CoQ10, which is ubiquinone, and then we add in vitamin C, ascorbyl palmitate, and it happens to be a reducing agent. It reduces the ubiquinone, which is in the oxidized state. Sometimes people call CoQ10 ubiquinone as oxidized CoQ10. It is. And then we use the vitamin C, and the vitamin C converts the ubiquinone to ubiquinol in situ while we're doing this. So we thought that that's a very good concept to do. And then we added into that GG because GG is required for the making of CoQ10. And so when we combine all of this together, that's what I market as duoquinol, the way to make ubiquinone to ubiquinol plus GG. And this product is not available until very recently.
So I want to back up for a moment and explain the differences to us between ubiquinone and ubiquinol, like the oxidized versus reduced form, but also, they both have benefits. They both recycle into each other in the body, but does that conversion change as we get older? Is the bioavailability of ubiquinol really better? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can. That's a very insightful question, and the audience a different degree of understanding may appreciate this as well. Ubiquinone and ubiquinol is essentially the same molecule. One is in a reduced state and one is in an oxidized state. And other people will debate if it's the same molecule or not, but I consider it the same as a chemist. Like when you say you take iron. So is the iron ferrous iron, which is a reduced state, or ferric iron, which is an oxidized state? But at the end of the day, ferrous and ferric is iron. So CoQ10 is oxidized or reduced like that. In the body, the currency of converting energy, which is ATP, adenosine triphosphate, it is just how our body understands to make energy. And it can only do that using ubiquinol. It cannot use ubiquinone to do this. So that's that piece. So most people thought of, then the body used ubiquinol, then ubiquinol would be the important, yes, that is true. So I call that ubiquinol is the activated form of CoQ10. That's one piece. Now, ubiquinol had two OH group on top and bottom. Ubiquinone have a ketone group and a ketone group. So for our audience who are not chemists, a simplistic way to understand this would be because alcohol group is more polar, therefore it is to be expected that ubiquinol is more bioabsorbed than ubiquinone because it's slightly more polar. That molecule behind me, as I indicated earlier, is already like an albatross. So if you anything that can help, and the OH group is here where my finger is pointing, that OH group and this OH group here. And if this two OH group is there, then it absorbs better. So this statement I'm trying to make is ubiquinol is more bioavailable form of CoQ10. So I made the second statement. So the third statement I'm going to make is when the CoQ10 has two OH group, it is actually an antioxidant. When it is the two ketone group like ubiquinone, it's not an antioxidant. Doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just not an antioxidant. So the third statement I'm going to make is ubiquinol is an antioxidant form of CoQ10. And then now you had heard me said earlier, I combine CoQ10 with GG. I combine with GG because GG is used by the body to convert it to CoQ10. So when I add ubiquinol with GG, then it's biochemically relevant form of CoQ10 because you put in the GG that can help and assist the human body to make CoQ10. Right now, I know of no substances that make CoQ10 other than supplementing CoQ10. So this is biochemically relevant. So that's the fourth statement. And the last statement that I made, when we made this duoquinol, I still deem that it needs assistance for the ubiquinol to be absorbed. So as a functional reason, we add in GG, and GG actually helps the ubiquinol to absorb better. We also add a natural ingredient called quiala, and the quiala is able to emulsify this ubiquinol CoQ10 and absorb better, so that this duoquinol is made more bioaccessible form of CoQ10. And then in the end, you can ask me again. I might as well do that now. If you think it's relevant, I'll do that. I see that. The audience can read this. You can read. I have mentioned each of those 4 or 5 things. So if you want that, I can send this to you. So when we make our dual quinol, it have all of these 5 benefits that a normal CoQ10 and ubiquinol by itself does not have. And that is the basis of the invention.
No, this is great. And in essence, what you're saying is when you're taking ubiquinol with GG, you're taking it and you're making it, right?
Yes, it does two at the same time. You deliver the CoQ10 in the active form. Plus, as we grow older, I know you asked a question earlier. When we grow older, do we make less CoQ10? We do make less. Because CoQ10 is such a large molecule, it needs enzymes to make each of the GGPs. And then the GGPs is elongated and then have to stitch onto the ring. And then it had to have the DNA to make the whole molecule. And it is well known if the audience Google mitochondrial dysfunction, energy deficit, they will find that this a big part of this mitochondrial dysfunction is because they don't make enough CoQ10. And therefore, as we age, there are higher chance that we don't make enough CoQ10, and even higher chance that the CoQ10 we made is not the ubiquinol form. It tends to be the ubiquinone form, which is not the activated form that the cell can use. So by adding the GG allows it to make more CoQ10. And functionally, the GG helped to solubilize the CoQ10 and then it absorbed better. So it was just a clever concept about assisting in the absorption and allowing the body to use the raw material GG to make a CoQ10. Hopefully, later on, you may ask me, I heard that a statin reduced CoQ10, and then that piece connect. Yes, that is true. That connect directly with GG.
I will ask you about statins, but before I do, I have another question. You talked about how it functions in the body. Can you talk more about where in the cells does CoQ10 work? Does it get into the mitochondria when we take supplemental CoQ10? Does it work in the cell membranes? Can you talk more about that?
Yes. If you think of a cell like a bean shape, like my mouse here, so inside each cell, not all cells look like bean shape, but most cells do, a bean shape. And then surrounding the cell it is a cell wall. And so I think of the cell wall as a gated community. It keeps it together, and inside it would be the nucleus. It make you look half of your parents' DNA each, and then the mitochondria that produce energy, and CoQ10 is actually synthesized in another part of the inside the cell called endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus. Usually we don't talk about that much, but they have important functions. But when they're ready, the CoQ10 is transported into the mitochondria, because in the mitochondria is where the energy throughput is to make ATP. So it moves from the other organelle to the mitochondria. And usually the more the person exercise and athletic, the mitochondria there are more mitochondria and the mitochondria size is bigger. So it's obvious. When we exercise more and we respirate more, then the mitochondria will be bigger. So therein is the importance of CoQ10. Think of CoQ10 in your car. It's really not the fuel. The fuel is the gas you put in your gas tank, and then the gas tank have to go all the way to that. And just before it gets to the engine to fire, to make the ATP, to make the car move, there's a tiny thing they call spark plug that fires it. And CoQ10 is the spark plug. So if you don't have the spark plug, it can't fire properly, and then the energy is not produced, and therefore the engine is not going to fire its piston. So and CoQ10 does that. So CoQ10 is not an energy source by itself. So once you use the CoQ10 like that, when it produces ATP, the CoQ10 is ubiquinol. It already, in order to make ATP, the ubiquinol becomes ubiquinone. And the ubiquinone is not lost. If the ubiquinone is lost, we'll probably live for 10 minutes and we all die. So the ubiquinone have to recycle, like the way you said at the beginning, and it will go to a place and become ubiquinol again, and then do its job, and then the thing goes over and over again. So when we give people ubiquinol, we're just assisting in the pathway so that they don't have to burden to make a ubiquinol every single time. And the GG piece is just a raw material to make the CoQ10. So that's how I think of ubiquinol work. That just particularly in the mitochondria. And if the audience want to know, well, mitochondria in what cells in the body? Is actually in all the cells in the body, but particularly important are in the cells where there are a lot of muscle, meaning the heart. Therefore, it has big implication in cardiovascular health and in the muscle. So therefore, if you exercise and walk or run, well, your muscle have to produce energy continuously. So therefore, in the muscle and in the heart. And on average, a person has 40% of his or her weight as muscle. So therefore, mitochondria in the muscle is just about every part of your body, but particularly in the part that converts a lot of energy. So therefore, mitochondria in the cell, particularly in the cells that needs a lot of energy, and dark meat, dark muscle, any part of your body that looks dark, which means the liver, the heart, and the muscle.
Okay, so you brought up the statins, and last time we touched on this. Why is it that you recommend that when someone is on a statin that they should, well, most cardiologists do recommend CoQ10. We know that now, but why the GG piece with the CoQ10?
That I can think of it illustrated in this way. The most traveled highway interstate in the US is Interstate 95, from all the way from Maine to Florida, like that. And the body makes 2 carbons at a time. Let's say you use this metaphor of the Interstate 95. The 2 carbon it made is in Boston. I'm just saying in Boston. Or even make it simpler. It's in Portland, Maine, in Maine. And then when it gets to Boston, it makes 5 carbon at a time. And when you take statin drug, it inhibit at the 5 carbon. That means it inhibit at the Boston area. Then when you get to New York City, that's when the body begin to make 15 carbon. The body makes 5 carbons at a time. Only in Portland, Maine, it make 2 carbon. In Boston, you already make 5 carbon, and that's where the statin work. It inhibit the 5 carbon, so it can't make it. And then if you don't inhibit it, then when you get to New York City, it's 15 carbon. At the 15 carbon piece in New York City, and then they begin to branch sideways. That's when they begin to cyclize and make other things, and eventually it make cholesterol. So if you now go back, when they came up with the drug of statin to inhibit at C5 at Boston, then at C15 in New York City, then it segued to make cholesterol drop. That was the original cleverness of using statin to inhibit the cholesterol synthesis. All good. So right now, I just told you the picture of how statin works. So now let's say this is New York City at 15 carbon. And then you get to Washington, D.C. This is still all on the Interstate 95. In Washington, D.C. is 20 carbon, 5 carbons more than in Boston. That 20 carbon, biochemists call that chemical geranyl, GG. So just keep this in mind. This is biochemistry. It had nothing to do with me pushing anything to take GG. That your body makes GG. That is where C20 is. And then if you segue from that C20 on the side way, remember we have the highway and the byway. When you segue this way, it makes two molecules. Listen to this very carefully. Your body is not going to change. This is how your body does it. It's nothing to do with me. So you segue, that entire C20GG claps on, stick onto the ring of vitamin K. We eat green leafy vegetable vitamin K, K1, phylloquinone, to help us to have no clot, to help us to clot in the body if you have tears and seal. That's phylloquinone. One small bit of it. Most of the phylloquinone comes into the body, look for a GG molecule, stitch onto it, and that is MK4. Ladies and gentlemen, I just explained to you how our body make menaquinone 4. And menaquinone 4 have all the implication in our body for bone health. You can ask me that if you want. Now, but let me finish this. So this GG 20 carbon make MK4, and then it continue to elongate the GG molecule, and eventually it get to 10 isoprene unit, 10 unit of 5. So it's 50 carbons long. And that's behind me. You see that? The CoQ10 molecule, it goes through my entire back to here on the GG, and then it make CoQ10 at the GG level. So now you go back to originally what I told you. If you have statin that inhibit it in Boston, but inhibit so well so that in New York City, the cholesterol drop, people know if you take statin drug, typically the cholesterol drop 40-50%. So you stifle, you block the road so tight in Boston that in New York City, it cannot make a cholesterol correct. But people stop there. They forget that if you stop the traffic so severely in Boston, it knocks off also severely in New York City, but it also constricts it even in Washington, D.C. And this is why for a long time, people and doctors know that when you take statin drug, CoQ10 drop. So CoQ10 drop is because when GG segue, CoQ10 cannot be made. But surprisingly, you should know MK4 is also not making, and therefore they don't have enough MK4 for the bone. If you Google in the literature, those that take a large amount of statin, they also have thinning of the bone like that. But more dramatically is because of the CoQ10 drop. So you ask the question, how does this connect to GG? Actually, CoQ10 drop when people take statin is actually a bystander. The real reason CoQ10 drop is because GG drop. When you inhibit here, the C15 drop that make cholesterol, the C20 drop like mad that make CoQ10. So CoQ10 drop because the raw material that make CoQ10 is decimated by the statin. That information is new. People did not talk about this, Evelyn, because there are no GG available. And happily, in American River Nutrition, we discovered this GG merely 5 years ago, and several companies use it. This is a real blessing because GG is an endogenous nutrient. It's a nutrient our body makes. It makes it to make MK4 that protects the bone, that removes calcification from the artery, many other things. Just this two is good enough on the MK4P. And CoQ10, we need CoQ10 just to have energy, and then that piece that need that. And then furthermore, GG, I know I said it the last time, but this is just refresh. GG is needed in our body to make skeletal muscle protein. And that is, is that important? Our body needs skeletal muscle, If we don't, as we age, we have sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass. Not a good thing. If you have elderly parents and grandparents, they cannot just slowly sit down on a chair. Once they're able to bend down, they almost slump into the chair, is because their trunk muscle is not strong enough to let them slowly sit down. So as we grow old, we have to get off our laurel and we do resistive exercise so that we can have enough strength. And GG will help in retaining muscle mass loss. So now that I mentioned this, I'm going to go back to statin again. Many alternative doctors care. When you take statin drug, they ask them to take CoQ10, and you and I know the reason now. But the traditional medical doctors may not care about CoQ10, but the traditional doctors will care. When they give statin drug, they always ask, when you come back, do you have any back pain, any
None.
muscle pain? They always ask that. They ask that because when people take statin drug, they oftentimes have a problem that doctors call myopathy.
Right.
Myo just means muscle. Pathy means something wrong with the muscle. And why did they have something wrong with the muscle, Evelyn? They have something wrong with the muscle because GG is required for the synthesis of skeletal muscle protein. That's it. So right now I explained yet another powerful piece why GG is needed, not only for CoQ10, but also directly for the muscle. So anyway, I'll pass it back on to you. It took a little longer for me to explain it, but I think this is important so people appreciate. It's almost ironic. If statin is never invented, I may have a hard time talking about the value of GG. Now that you appreciate the value of GG because of the decimation by statin simply decimates GG, and therefore you see all these side effects manifestation. But you know something? If there is no statin drug, GG is still there, quietly making CoQ10. GG is still there, quietly making skeletal muscle protein so that we don't have loss of energy and we don't have loss of muscle mass as we grow old. So do not only think that when you take statin drug, therefore you take GG and CoQ10. You should consider supplementing GG because as we age, we don't make enough GG to make muscle and we don't make enough GG to make CoQ10, both of them combined.
Thank you so much, Barry, for expanding on that from our last conversation. And I have a follow-up question, which we didn't get into last time. We talked a little bit about dosing for tocotrienols, but we didn't really talk about dosing for GG. So based on the research that you've done and the research that you've seen, in the studies based on different applications, whether we're looking at preventing muscle loss or looking at how much we need in addition to CoQ10 if somebody's on a statin, what are some of the dose ranges that are used?
I will answer it in a reverse manner. It'll be 150 minimum and the normal will be 300 milligram per day. They're in a tiny soft gel, and like tocotrienol and like CoQ10, they're lipid soluble. So when you take that, just remember to take it with a meal. So you have emulsification in your stomach when it churns, and when it gets to your small intestine, your body will produce bile salt, which is a natural detergent. And then you have lipase enzyme from the pancreas, and it will break down the fat, and all of this empower the lipid nutrient to absorb better, all good. So on the empty stomach, it doesn't do quite like this, and then the absorption will be much poorer like that. So having said that, I'll answer it several ways. We have a clinical study in Texas now, and let me tell you simplistically what the study has done. We randomize people who have high cholesterol that take statin, and they have confirmed myopathy. So they take statin drug and they have muscle aches and muscle problem for the reason I explained earlier. And then they have them slowly walk on a medicated treadmill, and then to see how long they can walk before they can experience the pain. So one group will be taking statin drug and doing that, and the other group will be the same. They're randomized exactly the same. They're taking the statin drug, doing the same, and one group take 150 milligram, the other group takes 300 milligram, and the placebo group is just taking the statin with nothing else. And so from there, so we designed the experiment at 150 and 300 milligram because we base it on animal study. So therefore, I would expect if people who are taking a statin drug, perhaps 300 milligram is advisable. 150 is fine if you don't experience any pain like that. And if somebody have a calcification score on the artery, then they may consider taking 300 milligram, or have kidney stone, also consider taking the high end. Now, why did I mention this? Remember how I said earlier, if you have high enough GG in your body make MK4. And MK4 is well known. You can memorize it. MK4 is well known. It sweeps the calcium in your body into your bone. Hence, it makes strong bone, but it will not litter the calcium in the artery to have arteriosclerosis, and neither in the kidney to have kidney stone, in the gall to have gallstone. So very simple. So like that. So if you have the adequate amount of GG, then the MK4 will be appropriately made, and then will make strong bone. So it's that piece there. And then so if you have that kind of a concern, then maybe 300 milligram would be appropriate like that. I personally, this is on the personal side, I take 150 milligram because I've been taking statin drugs, because my cholesterol is exceedingly high. To manage it, I do not have experienced myopathy symptoms, so I still take 150 milligram so that my muscle is well protected, and my CoQ10 level, and I measure my CoQ10 level several times. It is quite high. Of course, I take CoQ10 as well. So that's on the personal side. So the clinical study, I told you the dosage. And then from the vast number of animal study, most of the animal study, if you translate to human doses, they are typically 150 to 300 milligram. And in one clinical study we designed in hypogonadistic men, which means the men that have low testosterone, and at the 300 milligram level, they notice that their unbound testosterone increase higher. GG is known to increase testosterone, particularly for people who have low testosterone, and they may assist. And we saw that particularly in the 300 milligram group. So therefore, if you don't have any overt condition, 150 milligram would be good enough. And otherwise, a 300 milligram would work for those that have a mild condition of this or that. Hopefully, I can answer your dosage question in part. When the clinical study come out, Evelyn, then I can say a little bit more definitively. I'm not in the TOCO trial. I was able to say very clearly everybody should be taking 300 milligram and 600 milligram for people who have chronic condition, such as our study indicated from pre-diabetes, diabetes, and fatty liver disease like that. This sort of studies with GG is in the works. It's not yet finished.
What is some future research you'd like to do on GG?
In the future research, that's a brilliant question. I wanted to do additional study. When people take a supplement or an ingredient, they usually just go to the liver, and the liver metabolizes it, and then the liver sends it out and deliver to different parts of the organ. That's normally how the body does things. So the central depot, shall we say, is the liver. It goes there, metabolize, and then go to different organs. MK4 is not done that way. So the way MK4 is done is when the GG converts to MK4, the MK4 conversion, they call it extrahepatic, which means that the GG would go to all the 20, 30 different organs, and in the organ itself, it makes MK4. So Now, we cannot do human study on this because you cannot have biopsies of people's lung and heart. Is not allowed. So I'm hoping to prove this, that when I give animal GG, I will look for MK4 and I look for CoQ10 in 20 to 25 different organs. If I can show that and nail that, then for the first time, when people take GG, you know that in your different parts of your organ, you have in situ delivery of MK4 and CoQ10, which is where it's supposed to be in the first place.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping to do that study in the next year or two. And then I'm hoping to do some study with GG in I recently read and discovered, but I'm trying to think in my mind, winter is coming if you live in the cold area, and we have a coldness on the extremity of our hand and feet. So our body is supposed to thermal regulation like that because we are warm-blooded. And that thermal regulation is because when it gets cold, it constricts the blood vessel, and the warm blood goes to the skin and warm our skin. This is how you cannot make it happen. Your body automatically does it. And when your body unable to do that, then you become cold on your extremity. And when the body does that, another thing is happening. And this, I know some people consider this very cool and very sexy. I'm just explaining the story. We have white body fat and we have brown body fat. The white body fat is a storage depot for fat, and the brown body fat are burning fat. They have lots of mitochondria and produce energy. So when you need a warm energy, it carries to the warm blood to your skin and elsewhere like that. They found out in studies in animal that the transfer of heat from the white to the brown body fat and to the skin so that they won't have a cold intolerance is because of the compound GG. I would never have guessed that. So GG is responsible to help in the balancing of temperature in your body. Otherwise, we would have cold intolerance. So that's a very subtle thing like that. So, and I noticed that in different conditions, people who have immune disorder, I've heard that people who have COVID also have cold intolerance. I'm not making any of this claim. I'm just saying that I would like to do study to show when animal have GG, they're able to handle the cold intolerance and balance of the temperature to keep it at the body temperature. So those are the two things I wish to pursue, to find that MK4 and CoQ10 is found in all the different tissue, and to have GG able to prevent people from cold intolerance. The second one is not like a life and death one, but if we can do that, wow, this tiny molecule our body made can do a simple job like that, as is to keep our muscle together and all these other things that I talked about, or increase the testosterone. But that piece is not yet done. So I'm hoping to engage in that piece in the next year or two.
This is very exciting, Barry, and I love your enthusiasm about all this and your passion. And I can do an N of 1 study because I definitely get cold hands and feet. So I can try taking GG and see what happens this winter.
Yes.
I want to switch gears a little bit to a few questions that I didn't get to ask you about tocotrienols last time. You mentioned with the GG that you want to take it with food, and tocotrienols are also best taken with food since it is a fat-soluble nutrient. And yet, when one of the reasons, or the main reason why to choose tocotrienols over tocopherols, is that the alpha tocopherol can inhibit some of the other tocopherols or the tocotrienols. However, we can get some tocopherol in our food, right? So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. The concern expressed there, which I've heard other people bring it up from time to time. So how can I avoid tocopherol when it's commonly found in food? A great question. And it should be asked because concern on these are raised from time to time. The USDA and the American Food website said that when we take our normal fruits and vegetable oil like that, we typically will consume approximately a 10 to 15 milligram of alpha tocopherol. And at 10 to 15 milligram of alpha tocopherol a day, it does not interfere with tocotrienol function. I'll come to that in a moment. And plus, the 10 to 15 milligram a day would be fine like that. And say alpha tocopherol will begin to interfere when it is about 30% of the total vitamin E. For example, if you roughly speaking you consume 100 milligram of vitamin E, and for which you have 30 milligram alpha tocopherol, then the alpha tocopherol composition to the whole thing is 30%. Then that 30% would interfere like that. But the amount of alpha tocopherol we typically take maximally is 15 milligram, not 30 milligram. And I'm recommending people to take about 300 milligram. So 300 milligram, 15 out of 300 is 30 out of 300 is 10%. So 15 out of 300 is 7.5%. So 7.5% is significantly lower than 30%. So therefore, it would not interfere. So if you were to eat your normal food with vegetable oil, that would have X, Y, and Z amount of alpha tocopherol, typically is 10 to 15 milligram. That amount would not interfere. So there's no reason for you to be afraid that would interfere with the tocotrienol functions.
Great, thank you. Another question I've seen come up here or there is, what about the environmental impact of something like this? Do annatto plants just grow everywhere? Can you talk about the sourcing a little bit more?
The sourcing, yeah, we get most of our annatto, and I don't have I have a beautiful picture here of the annatto. Always like to show people. It's referred to as a lipstick plant because if you touch it, it will stain your finger. And then that color is called Bixin, and Bixin is used as annatto color in all your cheese, making that orangey yellowish hue or macaroni and cheese, that color. They're from this carotene. If you remove the carotene, that's where the tocotrienol is. We got this mostly from South America throughout, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, and other places as well. And they are usually produced by artisan farmers. They may have about 10 to 20 acres. So it's no mass plantation such as one would see for rubber or for coffee. Annatto is simply not grown like that. And I don't want to say we work with every artisan farmer. It's not true that either. But people who get the annatto get from this artisan farmer, and then they process the annatto. We don't directly buy the seeds. So we buy it from the people who collect them. They extract the annatto color out. And so what's the oil that they have, we work with them to clean up the oil. And when it comes to us, we continue to purify to high quality tocotrienol, which is our Delta Gold, and then GG, which is our GG Gold, like that, for different application. So I don't know if I answer your question. So that's how apart from that, we don't see any environmental factor as in El Nino, El Nina, or climate change that affect the sourcing, because the amount of annatto that is grown in the world is a fraction of how people would grow coffee or palm oil or rubber, but by a long shot, because the amount used is much, much smaller. and usually they are by small farmers. So when you take such product, indirectly it'll benefit many of these small farmers out there that mostly in South America.
I think that's great. I think one of the concerns is maybe with palm oil is deforestation. And so that's not happening with annatto plants. Like, forests are not being cleared to plant annatto, right?
For sure. If that is a concern, then the amount of annatto, if you just Google, sometimes you barely can find them. They're usually small shareholder, crop holder that owns the land to do that. No large plantation that I'm aware of. And I've been to South America to visit a lot. I think for us, it is almost like a rare find, people, I frequently sometimes tell my story like that. There are 50 million chemicals on Earth. Most of it are from plant, and plant make a lot of phytonutrient. And to find this annatto from the plant diversity is almost like a gift from God. It's almost like a spiritual experience for me. And I'm not even a medicine man, where they would just beat the bush and figure out things out there. I just happen to be in the right place at the right time, stumble on this, ask the right question. And it would have been enough if I have discovered the tocotrienol, and that would be a huge blessing. And I know this is not the time to say that. It is the only source of vitamin E that is free of tocopherol. I don't deserve this. It's from the plant. It's the doctor saying, how do you make this thing tocopherol free? No, I didn't make it tocopherol free. The plant makes it tocopherol free, So I don't deserve it, but that would have been enough. My son would say, but then when I did this, then at the end, when I extract the vitamin E, tocotrienol, I further find some light yellowish brownish oil, and curiosity, it didn't kill the cat, but curiosity had the better of me. And then I found out that, this is Geranyl GG. What is this compound? Then I started to read biochemistry textbook, and then I found out, oh my goodness, this GG is a big deal thing. It's just a quiet molecule in the body. So if people ask me, right, did I intentionally do tocotrienol? Now I'm making a pitch. Do I intentionally do tocotrienol and intentionally do GG to make a whole bundle of money? Absolutely not. I'm doing this because I'm a scientist. I'm figuring things out. And I'm just lucky that somebody up there see it fit to allow me to discover this. And when I did, then I said, well, then this is supposed to be shared to other people would benefit them. So I'm just doing this. So the tocotrienol is 30 years of my life. GG is newer. And of course, this ubiquinol that I said, duoquinol, is more recent of them all. And so after 40 years of doing it, I've only 3 things. So how can I be cashing to the bank fast? 3 things in 40 years. Actually, I'm working on something, but I cannot talk about it now.
Okay.
So next year, you're going to interview me on something I'm working on. And with that, I think it's time for me possibly to retire. That will be my full 40 years.
Goodness.
And I have 4 things, then I'll be. But right now, all these beautiful things, tocotrienol, GG, and then this ubiquinol, CoQ10. And when the 4th thing comes, I will lay it out there. And then after that, there are other sharper mind, brighter men and women out there. They probably can do other things. So unless I'm not bored, and I'll stick around a little bit longer. But otherwise, I think I made my contribution. Perhaps other people like yourself and like other people can do a better and stronger work in this.
Well, what a fateful day that was when you discovered when you saw that annatto plant that day when you were looking for the marigold. And what a legacy that you've left and continue to leave. It's really impressive. I just have one more question for you. One area that we didn't talk about last time in regards to tocotrienols was on neurological health. Can you talk about some of the research where tocotrienols have been used specifically for brain health, for neurological health?
Yes, probably the most compelling study. There are several animal studies that the tocotrienol can help the plasticity of the neuron. Remember earlier on I said most cell look like a bean shape, but not the neuron, not the nerve cell. The nerve cell in the brain, it looked like a tree, looked like a long thing, and then looked like the canopy of a tree. And it's kind of the long thing is like a receptor. And scientists call this nerve cell a plasticity so that it can grow. And tocotrienol had been connected to neuroplasticity of the growth of the neuron cell. It's a very important area. People are studying this because of Alzheimer's disease when they cannot see the neuron cell being plasticized, being easy enough to grow itself. So it's that piece. And tocotrienol has also been shown to protect the neuron from oxidation because the entire length of the neuron thing is a sheath. It's something that enwrap it. And that thing that enwrap the sheath of the neuron is actually DHA. So DHA is good to be there, that is in the brain, but DHA, as you know, is very easily oxidizable. Just think fish oil is oxidizable, and the tocotrienol is able to protect the oxidation of the sheath. So there's another application. And then another one that I heard people study is it also helps the whole animal to increase its memory like that. And so, of course, that would be important for loss of memory, not necessarily just Alzheimer's disease, the loss of memory to help the animal to increase the memory. And then there was a study in Europe a few years back where people who have the elderly who have normal memory, their blood have the higher amount of vitamin E, including tocotrienol, their mild dementia and have lower amount. And for the one that have Alzheimer's disease, have the lowest amount of vitamin E. So there's a correlation that the dementia degree is proportional to the amount of vitamin E tocotrienol. That's that piece. But there's no direct clinical study that I know of. So I would say if a person does not have any chronic condition that requires you to take 300 milligram tocotrienol, please consider taking 150 milligram tocotrienol. There are many companies out there sell that, designed for health, sell the 150 milligram tocotrienol. If you take that, minimally that would be to protect your cell wall from oxidative damage. See, just like that. Just a simple biochemistry so that the cell is able to maintain the gated community. But before you go, I wanted to say this. I know you asked me about the tocotrienol, so I answered that piece. Probably you may not know about this, Evelyn. GG is directly implicated to improve and increase memory. So now that I got your attention, I'll take 1 minute to explain. GG is required to make MK4. I already said it earlier. And the only vitamin K in the brain is MK4. There is no phyloquinone in the brain, no MK7 in the brain, and the only vitamin K in the brain is MK4. And there are two clinical studies. The two most dramatic one was they look at the elderly, and the one that have normal, just like the vitamin E study, the one that have the normal memory have the highest MK4 in the blood, and the one intermediate have lower MK4, and the one that Alzheimer have the lowest. That's one study. Another study, they look at centenarian who have passed away. They have donated their brain for research. So they have small tissue of the cadaver's brain, and they found out that, again, the same statement I made to you, for the one that have normal memory, highest MK4, there are no other vitamin K. And the one that mild dementia have in the brain, not in the blood. And then the one that Alzheimer have the lowest MK4. And I just explained to you that. And MK4 directly come from GG to synthesize it. So therefore, if we don't have enough GG, we simply will not be able to make enough MK4. So if I were to have continued good memory, I would personally consider taking GG, which I take 150 milligram a day, and tocotrienol for me, I take 300 milligram a day. And I find that exceedingly helpful to do that. So there you have it, a long way to answer your memory retention as I grow older. So would you believe it, Evelyn? I'll be 70 years old next month, and I'm very grateful and I have got a brain that continue to be very active, and I'm physically active. Hopefully, God willing, I would be able to live long life and productive life. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy early birthday. And last time when we were talking about skin health, I said, okay, I definitely need to take my tocotrienols every single day. And I think all of us obviously care about healthy aging, right? And so much of that is our bone health, it's our skeletal health, it's our cognitive health, skin health, I think is related to that too.
Yeah.
But all of these parts of healthy aging, it just shows to me that I really need to be on top of it. And so I'm going to add that GG to my tocotrienols. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming back to the show today, for sharing your expertise and your passion with us. And thank you for tuning in to Conversations for Health. Check out the show notes for resources from today's show. Please share this podcast with your colleagues. Follow, rate, leave a review wherever you listen. And thank you for designing a well world with us.
This is Conversations for Health with Evelyn Lambrecht, dedicated to engaging discussions with industry experts, exploring evidence-based cutting-edge research and practical tips.